During the divorce, my daughter texted, "Mom says you never cared about us." I responded, "That's her view." Then I presented the court with proof of my ex-wife's extravagant spending from the kids' trust. My ex was suddenly flooding my phone with apologies as her alimony was slashed. I, 42M, never thought I'd be sharing my story on Reddit, but here I am. When my marriage of 15 years began crumbling, I expected the process to be difficult. What I didn't expect was how quickly my ex would try to turn our children against me, or how thoroughly she'd been draining the financial resources meant for their future. It started with small changes. The kids' weekend visits became increasingly tense. My daughter would arrive with a new designer bag, but mentioned she couldn't afford the school trip. My son would show up in expensive sneakers, but complain about not having money for his robotics club. Something wasn't adding up. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. My phone lit up with a message from my daughter. "Dad, Mom says you never really cared about us. That's why you left." The accusation stung like hell. I'd been the one who attended every recital, every game, who set up college funds when they were still in diapers. I'd left because their mother's serial infidelity had finally broken me, not because I didn't care. I took a deep breath before responding. Getting defensive would only validate whatever narrative my ex was spinning. "That's her view." I texted back. "I hope someday you'll form your own opinions based on my actions, not someone else's words." What my ex didn't know was that I'd been quietly building a case. Not out of vindictiveness, but out of necessity. As part of our separation agreement, we'd established trust funds for our children's education and future needs. I had continued making substantial contributions, even taking on extra consulting work to ensure they'd have everything they needed. But something felt off. The account balances weren't growing as they should have been. When I finally gained access to the complete financial records through my attorney, what I found made my blood run cold. Withdrawals for spa weekends, designer clothing purchases, first-class tickets to Paris, a weekend getaway to the Bahamas with her new boyfriend, all from accounts meant for our children's futures. The trust had specific terms about acceptable withdrawals, education, medical expenses, essential needs. Not one of these extravagant purchases qualified. My lawyer was stunned. "This is straightforward misappropriation of funds," she told me. "The judge needs to see this." I didn't want to use this as a weapon. These were still my kid's mother. But she had left me no choice by actively turning them against me while simultaneously stealing their future security. The day of our court hearing arrived. My ex strutted in wearing a new designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She barely acknowledged me, just flashed a smug smile at her attorney. When the judge asked about the children's welfare and financial arrangements, my attorney calmly presented the evidence: detailed bank statements, receipts, credit card bills, all showing the systematic draining of our children's trust funds for personal luxury items. "Your Honor," my attorney said, "we have documented evidence of over $87,000 withdrawn from the children's educational trusts in the past 8 months alone. None of these expenses relate to the children's education, health, or welfare as stipulated in the trust agreement." The color drained from my ex's face. Her attorney frantically flipped through papers, clearly blindsided. The judge's expression hardened as she reviewed the evidence. "These are serious allegations. Can you explain these expenditures?" she asked my ex. My ex stammered something about misunderstandings and temporary borrowing, claiming she'd planned to replace the money. The judge wasn't buying it. "The court takes a very dim view of misappropriation of funds designated for minor children," the judge stated firmly. "Based on this evidence, I'm ordering a freeze on these accounts immediately, with sole control transferred to the father pending further investigation." But that wasn't all. The judge continued. "Furthermore, given this demonstration of financial irresponsibility and apparent attempt to alienate the children from their father, I'm revising the previously discussed alimony arrangement." The original alimony agreement had been generous, perhaps too generous. Now it was slashed by more than half. My ex's face contorted in shock and anger. As we left the courtroom, my phone began buzzing incessantly. Text after text from my ex. "You had no right to humiliate me like that. I can explain everything if you'd just listen. Please, we need to talk about this. The kids need that money. I'm sorry, okay? Is that what you want to hear?" I didn't respond immediately. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting my children. That evening, I sat my kids down during their scheduled visit. My daughter, still influenced by her mother's words, was cold at first. My son, always more observant, seemed confused by the tension. "I need to tell you both something important," I began carefully. "There have been some changes to how your college funds are being managed." I explained, in age-appropriate terms, that there had been some problems with how the money was being spent, and that I would now be overseeing their accounts to ensure the money would be there when they needed it for college and their futures. But Mom said you're just being controlling and trying to punish her, my daughter challenged. I showed them the bank statements, not to turn them against their mother, but to show them the truth. I'm not asking you to pick sides. I'm just asking you to look at facts. My son's eyes widened as he recognized the dates of some withdrawals, times when he'd been told there wasn't enough money for school activities or new equipment for his hobbies. So all those times Mom said we couldn't afford my science camp. He trailed off. My daughter remained quiet, processing. I didn't push. The next day, my phone rang. It was my ex, her voice softer than I'd heard it in years. Can we talk? Please. I've made some mistakes. We agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop. She arrived looking nothing like the confident woman who had strutted into court. Her designer clothes were replaced with simple jeans and a sweater. I never meant to hurt the kids, she began. Things just got out of control. After we separated, I was trying to keep up appearances to show everyone I was doing fine. By spending our children's future? I asked quietly. She looked down. I know how it looks. I didn't think it would matter that much. You always make good money, and I figured you'd just replace whatever I took. The entitlement in her statement was breathtaking. I kept my voice level. That money wasn't mine to replace. It wasn't yours to take. It belonged to our children. I know that now, she said, tears forming. The judge made that very clear. I can't live on what she's allowing me now. I can't maintain the house, the lifestyle the kids are used to. Maybe that's the point, I replied. Maybe it's time to focus on what the kids actually need rather than the appearance you want to maintain. She asked if I would consider speaking to the judge, explaining it was all a misunderstanding. I declined. This isn't about punishing you, I explained. It's about protecting our children. You've been telling them I don't care about them while simultaneously taking the money I set aside for their future. That stops now. In the weeks that followed, things began to shift. My ex moved to a smaller house, still perfectly nice, but without the excessive luxury she'd become accustomed to. She got a part-time job for the first time since we'd married. Most importantly, my relationship with my children began to heal. Without the constant negative commentary about me, they started to see for themselves. My daughter's texts became warmer. My son asked if he could stay extra days during his visits. 3 months after the court hearing, I received an unexpected email from my daughter's school account. Dad, I found my old diaries from when I was little. I was reading through them and saw all the stuff you used to do with us. The science projects you helped with, the times you taught me to ride a bike, all the bedtime stories. I don't know why I forgot all that. I'm sorry I believed Mom when she said you didn't care. I know that's not true. I read that email a dozen times, tears streaming down my face. Update 1. 6 months have passed since the court hearing that changed everything. The judge's final ruling was even more comprehensive than the initial decision. My ex was ordered to repay every cent taken from the children's trusts, with a structured payment plan that would take years to fulfill. Her alimony remained at the reduced amount, with the court citing her deliberate financial malfeasance as justification. What surprised me most was how quickly our family dynamic shifted once the financial manipulation stopped. My daughter, now spending more time at my place, admitted that her mother had been coaching her on what to say to me, even offering rewards for reporting back on my activities and relationships. She told me if I mentioned you were dating anyone, she'd take me shopping. My daughter confessed one evening as we made dinner together. I didn't understand why it mattered so much to her. My son, always more resistant to manipulation, had been carrying his own burden. Mom would cry whenever I talked about having fun at your house, he told me. Eventually, I just stopped mentioning it. The most significant change came when my ex's financial situation forced her to take a full-time position. With her working regular hours, we adjusted the custody arrangement. The kids now spent weekdays with me during the school year, something she had vehemently opposed during initial negotiations, claiming the children needed their mother during the week. In reality, she had wanted the primary custody designation to maximize child support payments while minimizing her actual childcare responsibilities. Now that the financial incentives were removed, her priorities became startlingly clear. One evening, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was my ex's sister, someone I'd always gotten along with during our marriage. I owe you an apology, she said without preamble. She told the family you had gambling debts, and that's why the kids' accounts were empty. I believed her. We all did. I wasn't surprised. My ex had always been skilled at creating narratives that cast her as the victim. What changed? I asked. She asked to borrow money from me last week. When I asked why, her story kept changing. So I did some digging and found the court records. She paused. Those were the kids' college funds, weren't they? Yes, I said simply. I'm sorry, she repeated. The family's been helping her financially because we thought you had created this mess. We didn't know. This conversation led to a gradual reconnection with my former in-laws, people I'd always cared about, but had been cut off from after the separation. They had been fed the same toxic narrative as my children, and like my children, they were beginning to see through it. Update 2. The 1-year anniversary of our divorce finalization arrived with little fanfare. I had settled into a new routine with the kids, one that prioritized stability and open communication. My ex had made some efforts to change, though her remorse seemed more connected to the consequences she faced than genuine regret over her actions. The most significant development came unexpectedly. My son found additional financial documents while helping his mother organize her home office during his weekend visit. Always curious, he photographed statements that confused him and showed them to me when he returned. What I saw left me speechless. Beyond the trust fund misappropriation we'd already discovered, there was evidence of a separate account, one I'd never known about, containing substantial funds that should have been disclosed during our divorce proceedings. My attorney was clear. This is deliberate concealment of marital assets. The court takes this very seriously. I was reluctant to reopen legal proceedings. The children had finally found some stability, and I worried about disrupting that. But the amount was significant, money that rightfully belonged partly to me, but more importantly, could provide additional security for our children. After careful consideration, I filed the necessary motions. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. My ex's reaction was immediate and explosive. The apologetic demeanor vanished, replaced by the familiar pattern of threats and manipulation. The children received tearful calls claiming I was trying to destroy their mother. My daughter, now more discerning, recorded one such conversation and played it for me without comment. She doesn't realize I understand what she's doing now, my daughter said with a maturity beyond her years. The hearing was brief but consequential. The judge, already familiar with our case, reviewed the new evidence with visible disappointment. The court gave you an opportunity to demonstrate financial responsibility and honesty. She told my ex, this new evidence suggests you have failed to do so. The hidden account was ordered to be frozen and equally divided. Additionally, the judge revisited the alimony arrangement, further reducing it based on this new evidence of financial deception. As we left the courtroom, my ex approached me directly for the first time in months. "Are you happy now?" she hissed. "You've taken everything." I looked at her, this woman I had once loved enough to build a life with, and felt nothing but sadness. "I haven't taken anything that wasn't rightfully mine or the children's," I replied quietly. "And that's the difference between us." Update 3. It's been 2 years since that first court hearing that exposed the financial deception. Life has settled into a new normal that would have been unimaginable during those dark days of our separation. My daughter graduated high school last month. During her speech as class valedictorian, she spoke about integrity and honesty in ways that brought tears to my eyes. She's heading to college in the fall, paid for by the trust fund that was protected and has now grown substantially with proper management. My son has blossomed without the constant tension, excelling in both academics and his robotics competitions. The anxiety that had plagued him during the worst of the divorce conflict has largely disappeared. My ex has changed too, though the path hasn't been straight. After the second court hearing, she went through a period of escalating hostility, attempting to retaliate through increasingly desperate means. She tried to relocate for work opportunities that would have complicated our custody arrangement. When that failed, she briefly attempted to alienate the children again, but they were older now, more aware of manipulation tactics. The turning point came unexpectedly. My ex developed health issues that required surgery and a lengthy recovery. With no one else available to help, I adjusted my schedule to ensure the children could still see her regularly during her recovery, even driving them to her home on my days when she was too unwell to drive. This act of basic decency, something I did for my children's sake, not hers, seemed to finally break through. During one such visit, while the kids were in another room, she looked at me with clear eyes for perhaps the first time since our marriage ended. "You could have used this to take the kids away completely," she said quietly. "The court would have given you full custody while I'm recovering." "That wouldn't have been good for them," I replied simply. "They need both parents." Something shifted after that conversation. The hostility gradually faded. The manipulation attempt stopped. She began focusing on rebuilding her relationship with our children based on who she actually was, not the carefully crafted image she had maintained for so long. Last week, she called to discuss our daughter's college arrangements. At the end of the conversation, she said something I never expected to hear. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice steady. "Not just for the money, for trying to turn them against you, for lying to everyone. You were a good father all along, and I tried to take that away from them because I was angry and scared." I didn't respond immediately, processing the weight of words I'd stopped expecting long ago. "Thank you for saying that," I finally replied. "It matters. As I reflect on this journey, I realized that the revenge wasn't in the court victories or the financial consequences my ex faced. The true vindication came in staying steady, focusing on my children's well-being rather than retribution, and allowing the truth to emerge naturally over time. My daughter texted me last night. "Dad, remember when I said Mom told me you never cared about us? I wish I could go back and tell myself how wrong that was." Some victories don't need to be announced in a courtroom. Sometimes, they arrive in quiet text messages that heal wounds you thought would last forever.